In today's video, I'm going to show you one move when you start your swing that could make or break the rest of your swing. I'm going to show you what I did with a recent student, and I'm also going to give you two simple drills that you can use to have this in your own swing. Before we dive into that, quick word from today's video sponsor. All right, guys, I'm super excited to introduce to you the Grooveit. The best players in the world, they have a caddy cleaning their grooves every single shot. You don't need a caddy, you need the Grooveit. I'm someone who very, very rarely would clean my clubs. And if you were like me, I'd go out and hit shots with my irons, they'd hit the greens and they would never spin, right? They'd bounce off the greens. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why can't I hold a darn green? And a huge part of it is I never cleaned my grooves. Partially, honestly, just because I'm lazy. There was no sort of easy way to do it. When I got the Grooveit, and the reason that I love it so much is it makes it so easy for me. It's almost ridiculous for me to not clean my grooves when I have it on there. It's on my bag, I pull it off, I spritz a little bit of water down, I can clean those grooves right off. Super simple to use. I've never found a club cleaner, right, a brush like this, that is this good. I've had different brushes before where you can't put any water or cleaning solution in, and I just didn't really ever use them, or I feel like they scratch my club. This brush is super simple, never scratches any of the clubs. Clean each shot after you hit. You're gonna absolutely love the Grooveit. So if you're a golfer and you don't have one, I would grab one for yourself. In fact, I'd grab a couple. They're so affordable. I'd grab a couple for your friends. You have family that play. It would be a nice Christmas gift. We're gonna put a link down below. I want you to click that link, grab a couple of these. You're gonna thank me later. You're absolutely gonna love it. All right, guys, so I was working with a recent student of mine on how they start their golf swing, and there's a few key checkpoints that I want to give to you to help you ensure that the rest of the swing works correctly as well. And I'm going to show you some visuals here on the screen as we go from a couple of the best ball strikers that I've ever seen personally with their irons. You're going to see some of the moves that we're talking about here as we go. This is what I worked on with the student that I want you to get good at as well. There's two key checkpoints that you want to be able to hit early in your swing to set you up for success later on. And the macro thing here is getting the club correctly on plane right away. Now, when I say getting the club correctly on plane right away, you're going to see with Tiger in his prime, Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama, three of the best iron players throughout their career that I've ever seen, how they all get the club setting during the backswing the same, which leads to good shaft angles coming down. So when we take your setup position, the first thing that I was working on with the student here was let's get the club hinging up in line with the right forearm. Up in line with the right forearm. And we can see with the Tiger model, he hinges it right up through his forearm. Justin Thomas hinges it right up through his forearm. Hideki Matsuyama hinges it right up through his forearm. And that was the first piece that we were checking on. Now, this student in particular was hinging it underneath his forearm or too far inside. And you may be doing that as well. Also, some students I have get a little bit too far outside the forearm. I don't mind slightly above the forearm, but let's shoot to get it right on the forearm. Why? Because that sets us up for the next piece for us, which is at about halfway back, we want to have the butt of the club pointed just inside the golf ball line. And you'll see with all three of those players, if we put a line through the shaft, that points just inside the ball line. And the shaft angle we get on the way back is the piece that then makes it very easy to get the club coming just underneath that in early transition. If you're like the student that I was working with, and a lot of our members have these issues, if you don't get it hinged up the forearm and inside of the ball line, you're gonna likely be somewhere that's so far off plane, either outside or underneath, that causes you negative reactions on the way down. So making your downswing on plane and successful is all about getting the club set up properly on the way back. Now, two simple drills that we use. One is a really simple drill I'm going to show you. The second one's one you can do at home that I gave the gentleman I was working with. The first thing I want you to do to get a feel for this is take the club in front of you, and I want to do a little split hand grip. So you can hold the trail hand just outside of the grip here. But now here's a big key. If you do this normally, you would notice that your palm and hand, the glove logo, points away from you. I'd like you to reverse that arm to the point where the glove logo points towards you instead of away. So now the palm is facing away. My hands are maybe, I don't know, let's say 8 to 10 inches apart there on the setup, on the grip. So just outside the grip. Now, when I make a backswing, what I want to be able to do, and I'll explain why that arm is so important, is make some swings to about hip high where the butt of the club feels like it points straight down just inside that ball line. Again, why inside the ball line? Because if I get it there on the way back, it's going to be very easy to get slightly underneath that on the way down, like all of those players do. If you get to a position where you're too far under the plane going back, you're going to get the opposite, which is too far over coming down. If you're too far over going back, usually you're going to get too far under coming down. Are there some players who go too far under or too far over and get back on plane? Of course. But most of those players are going to struggle, 80 to 90% of them. So why not just get it set right on plane? Now, the reason we change this arm is if I take my setup with my glove logo away and my elbow towards the target, I'm presetting my arm slightly rotated at the setup position. I see a lot of players do it this way, leads to too much arm rotation on the way back, too flat of a shaft. So we set the arm underneath to be able to prevent that. When I set it underneath, the palm away, glove logo towards me, elbow towards me, I'm presetting my arm rotated kind of counterclockwise, or supinated, externally rotated is the fancy terms, which makes it easier for me to go back and keep the club on plane, more vertical. Okay, you're going to feel a little bit of a difference there in your arm rotation compared to normal. The guy was like, man, I really almost feel like I'm reverse rolling it, like I'm kind of rolling the club a little bit counterclockwise, which would make sense because imagine if I did it the bad way, logo away like this, and I got too much arm rotation, I kept the elbow away, glove logo up, this would feel like I'm turning the steering wheel clockwise, getting very flat. So here's how the drill progression works. Again, palm under, split grip. We're gonna do 2 rehearsals with the club, feeling what it feels like to keep the elbow and the glove logo pointed towards me as I make a backswing. It almost feels like I'm dumping out, like if I had water in a bucket, I'm dumping it out to the left, counterclockwise. Again, it's exaggerated on purpose. So the shaft feels more vertical. See, my left thumb points more down towards the ground, okay? Now I'm gonna take that same thing and do a feel with my normal grip and normal setup. How do I feel the same things? Okay, I feel like when I'm doing that, the elbow still points down towards the ground, the left arm's a bit more connected, and the shaft feels a bit more vertical. And I'm trying to do that to the point where, if we drew a line up the shaft at setup, the club head rides right up that during the takeaway, hides my hands, just like those models. The shaft rides right up my forearm, and the butt of the club points just inside the ball line. Then from there, I can continue my turn and swing down. I don't have to think about anything else. So I felt that twice. I'm gonna try and replicate the same things when I go back and look and see if I hit those same checkpoints. So to me, I have that sensation as if my arm, and this is what the student had as well, my arm's not rotating clockwise as much on the way back. High left shoulder, elbow away, glove logo up. I feel when I do this, my left shoulder stays down. Elbow towards me, palm away, right? Almost like I'm going a little bit counterclockwise at the feel. The arm feels a little bit tighter in. So we did a progression with that drill like normal. Now, I had an hour-long lesson, right? So, you know, we talked about this and did this for probably 30 minutes. We just did a rep or two. But I would do this same progression here, film myself from down the line like I was doing with him, and we looked at every single swing. Okay, more, less, sooner, later to get the details. But as we continue to do 2 rehearsals, he started to feel this more. Okay, the arm feels across the chest a little more. I feel the arms counter-rotating a little bit more vertical. And what we started to see is when he started to make swings with the same feels, that all of a sudden, the backswing plane started to get really good. Again, this took, 10, 15, 20 reps of us going back and forth, but eventually when he was feeling like he was going like this, the club was going right up the plane line, right up the forearm, and just inside the butt of the club. And the goal there is to get this shaft in a neutral position. And then we looked when he got to about left arm parallel, just like these models, the shaft will be slightly underneath that. Now, this is a pretty simple drill and version we did. I left him with a little bit more complicated drill to use at home I want to show you next. Okay, so still pretty simple, but slightly more complex or add-on drill you can do with this that I gave to the gentleman. Put a club in line with the ball target line, just so you have a visual reference, and take an alignment rod and just put it on the side of the club here. When you put it on the side of the club, it'll just sit on the side of your hip. And as we were doing those drills and those feels, I said to him, just to give him a visual, when you're at home, why don't you put this on the side and just make sure the stick, when you're going back, right, the takeaway is right up the plane line, we're up the forearm, so I can start to see the stick get just inside the ball once my hands are about hip high, and continue that going inside the ball to about left arm parallel, and eventually all the way up to the top. But very good visual here, just to start to get a sense. The club head stays over the club here early from my point of view, and this stick points inside the ball, inside the club. Reset, inside the ball, inside the club. So it's just a different drill to do the same thing. We did, hey, do 2 rehearsals like that, take the stick out, feel the same thing without the stick in, reset, and then try and produce that same motion. And that, again, we looked at on video and produced a very good motion going back. So pretty simple way to do it. I like there to be 1 or 2 rehearsals, hit a ball, check video. 1 or 2 rehearsals, hit a ball, check video. The point being, if you don't get the club up your forearm on plane on the way back, it's much harder to get the downswing pieces. Not impossible, but much harder. Just like Tiger, JT, and Hideki, some of the best iron strikers that I've seen, you can have that same thing. So implement these pieces when you're practicing. Put those drills in, utilize video. If you're not sure where to start with your golf swing, you feel stuck, frustrated, want some help, go to cogornogolf.com, send your swings in. We could look at those, analyze those, set you up a specific practice plan with drills, reps, feedback, and accountability. If you have any questions at all about cogornogolf.com or this video, leave a comment down below. Appreciate you guys being here.